Alright all, and welcome back to a new video and the Day 2 preview of the Cheltenham Festival 2021. Should be a brilliant video to get through some of the main races on Wednesday's card for Cheltenham. Obviously we're still a month out, but we're going to be previewing the big races on the day: the Ballymore, the Brown Advisory Novices Chase, the Champion Chase, the Cross Country Chase and the Champion Bumper in this one. We do know the large amount of horses that are going to be running in these sort of races, and therefore I'm pretty happy to give my conclusions and give my thoughts on each and every race. Thank you very much for the response to the Day 1 preview. It's gone down really well. There's been an awful lot of views, an awful lot of likes, and an awful lot of really nice comments. And also, the blog post that's accompanied with it, which is in the description below each video, and also there's a link to it on Twitter, has gone down pretty well as well. Just in case there are some of you out there that would prefer to read rather than listen, or potentially just want to see some of the thoughts just on the screen, and you can watch or you can read in your own time rather than having forced to listen to it via YouTube. So I want to really thank you for that. There's a few things I want to get through just before we get into the video. A couple of plugs, I suppose. First of all, one for Kieran from Horse Racing Buddy. Obviously, I'm in the Horse Racing Buddy Club. I've said that many times on some of the different videos, but Kieran himself has decided to do some Cheltenham preview videos this year. He's previewing one race a day from now until Cheltenham, but he does go into them at depth, 15-minute videos around about that, and they're really good, and he started his new YouTube channel. So if you could go over and give that a look, I'd be really appreciative. He's a man that knows his onions. He's grown a really good club in Horse Racing Buddy, and of course if you want to get involved in that, do let myself or him know. But also make sure to look at his videos and just give it a like and subscribe if you do enjoy what you're seeing around there. I've been lucky enough to be invited onto a couple of preview evenings for Cheltenham. Look, March is a busy enough time of things, and hopefully I'll be able to get on to a few different podcasts and a few different evenings. Starting off with next Friday, I'm on the Finishing Lines live Cheltenham preview night at 7:30, I believe it is, live on YouTube. So hopefully that can add to a little bit more interaction from the public as well. If you want to check that out, obviously the lads at the Finishing Line and myself get on very well. Andrew, Tom and Dave. We're also being joined by Sam and Jack from Next Gen Racing, who were also, I did a bit of work with them with Racing Central before we evolved into two different channels with Let's Talk Racing and Next Gen Racing. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. Hopefully a couple of beers over the night, and hopefully we get a few decent enough thoughts as well. Two over in England I've been invited on to. One very kindly by Gary Sivs, who also does his own YouTube videos, and I've appeared on a couple of his videos with himself and Mark. Really have a lot of time for Gary. He's a great man, and he always previews and hosts a Cheltenham preview evening, I think, in his local pub in support of the Bob Champion Cancer Trust, a very good trust at that. Bob Champion himself is on the panel. Andy Holding, the odds checker, tipsters on there. Phil Kirby, Sean Quinlan, myself and Emmett Kennedy. So it's really a jam-packed lineup, and a lineup that I'm only privileged to be invited onto. I must say it's very nice of Gary to have entrusted me with coming on to it, especially with such other members on there that obviously know their onions. And another one, just the last one, is another one for a charity. I think it's on the 5th of March. Gary Sivs' one is on Saturday the 13th. This is on, I think, Friday the 5th of March. And it's another one for charity. Alex Letitia is doing a run to hopefully provide money and build up some money for two different charities. It should be a brilliant evening. I'm extremely lucky to have been asked on to do a few contributions. There's contributions from Will Smith, who's actually a former county cricketer, and obviously I have a bit of an interest in cricket myself. Will Smith was a very good county cricketer at that, and he's now a William Hill tipster. There is Mick Shannon Jr., obviously son of the Mick Shannon, and Ed Chamberlain is, I think, making a few contributions as well. And obviously, nobody needs to introduce Ed Chamberlain, probably the biggest heavyweight in the game in terms of a presenting perspective. So, really, really excited to be asked onto those sort of things. It's a bit of a feather in the cap for myself, and it's all down to the support that you guys have given me that I've been able to get a couple of these opportunities. So I can't be more grateful than I am to every single person that's been watching, liking and and subscribing to these videos, because it's getting the word out there, and as a result I'm being able to make a few steps in the game, into hopefully making a life out of media, you know, within sport, whether it is horse racing or a couple of different sports at that. Obviously the videos with Josh on Let's Talk Racing are my other big thing, and we've been really happy with the response we've gotten. Our handicap video's gotten over 10,000 views already, which is brilliant. I'm really enjoying it. It's a different dynamic with cameras kind of coming from each side, but hopefully the quality is decent enough, and hopefully you're enjoying that dynamic if you do watch those videos as well. But enough plugs for now. We need to get into day 2's action. Starting off with the Ballymore Novices Hurdle, and this looks to be probably the strongest of the 3 novice hurdles. When you compare this to Supreme and the Albert Barta, this has 3 very good horses, I believe, in Gerhard, Bob Ollinger and Bravemansgame. I'm not sure there's an over amount of depth in the race, that being said, and therefore there doesn't look to be any really screaming at me from an each-way price perspective. Just looking at those horses before we get into the main 3 protagonists, the likes of a Blue Lord's in there 20 to 1. I'd say more than likely we'll still be seeing him in the Supreme rather than the Ballymore. Bear Gills is in there at 14 to 1 for Nicky Martin. He's a progressive horse, but he wouldn't be for me. I think his jumping leaves an awful lot to be desired, and if I'm going to crab the likes of a Ballyadam in the Supreme, you have to crab Bear Gills, just from his lack of fluency in his jumping, and hopefully, you know, he is a lovely horse. He will I'd like to think he'd end up turning into a proper graded horse, but he would need to sort that out, and perhaps putting a fence in front of him, as weird as that sounds when they don't jump hurdles too well, maybe he'd respect a fence a little better in time. I know they've said that chasing should be his game in years to come. But going through the 3 main protagonists, and starting off with the market leader Gerhard for the Donnellys and Willie Mullins, a very formidable pairing, one to not take too lightly as well. This horse came over from France with a tall enough reputation and was sent off just a shade of odds on his maiden hurdle debut at Punchestown, where he was turned over by Holy Macapony on heavy ground over 2.5 miles. He didn't seem to like that real testing ground, and perhaps it was just his first start. Sometimes these Mullins horses coming over from France take a while to acclimatise to conditions, and perhaps he was just one of those that just struggled a little bit to get through the grounds and maybe produce on his first start in Ireland. He was well beaten, and that being said, Holy Macapony has disappointed twice since, hasn't quite looked himself since that run, so maybe it's actually taken a bit more out of the winner than we maybe thought it did at the time. But people have remained the faith in Gerhard, and he went off a fairly short odds over Christmas. I put him up actually in one of the Christmas videos. I think it was 13 to 8, 6 to 4. It was no crazy price to win a maiden hurdle around Leopardstown. He beat Mr. Incredible and Magic Days, both trained by Henry de Bromhead, who have both won maiden hurdles pretty impressively since. I think that therefore that rates as pretty good form in the book. He did it very nicely that day, didn't come off the bridle, and won by 9 or 10 lengths going away. He then ran in the Nathaniel Lacey Novices Hurdle over 2 miles 6 at the Dublin Racing Festival, and again won impressively. I thought for a little moment turning in that Statler might have him on the ropes, but he went by Statler pretty easily in the end and beat Gentleman's Game and Statler by 5 lengths. Pretty easily at the line. He does wear a hood. I think the step back down to the extended 2.5 miles rather than the 2 miles 6 will probably see this horse to best effect. Even a stronger gallop on in store would probably help him as well. He can be a little bit keen. He does wear that hood, and it just wouldn't surprise me if a little step down in trip was actually to help him going forward. That being said, based off that form alone, I can't understand why he's favourite at 3 to 1, and maybe you guys might chime in here thinking that that's maybe something you disagree with, but I just can't have him as favourite in my book just based on form. I look at that Nathaniel Lacey race, and as much as I think the form is good, because I do like the likes of Statler and Gentleman's Game, these are horses that are more than likely going to be rocking up in an Albert Bartlett. In fact, I don't think there was almost any runner in that race that's going to end up running in the Ballymore, maybe bar a Ganapathy or something, who was well beat and probably wouldn't be up to it in the first place. So, with that being said, is the is the form of beating Albert Bartlett horses over 2 miles 6, is that a winning of being favouritism for this race? I'm not so sure it is, especially given the horses he's up against. In a normal year, probably yes, that would be the case, but he's up against 2 above average horses here, and I think he's a little bit skimpy in the market, personally speaking, at 3 to 1. If you've got him at bigger prices, fair enough to you, but I don't think he's that much value at 3s, currently speaking. Bob Ollinger is next in the market at a best price of 4 to 1 for Henry de Bromhead and Rachel Blackmore. I suppose earlier in his career I've been a little bit snippy about Bob Ollinger, but a little bit like honeysuckle for Henry de Bromhead, I've kind of turned full circle. Look, this is an absolutely super horse, I believe. He's got the mark of being a really good horse. Yes, he probably will be seen to best effect over a fence in time, but he's still a really good novice hurdler as it is. His only defeat has come against Fernie Hollow, and I suppose you look at Appreciate its record, and one of his only defeats was against Fernie Hollow as well, and yet I think he's a rock-solid favourite for the Supreme. As for this lad, I'm not so sure. Up until I'd say a week or two ago, I was thinking, is he going to have that much of a chance in the Ballymore? But to be consistent, he must have a massive chance in the Ballymore, and I think he rates as a very, very big danger. I was really impressed with what he did at Naas the last day. He jumped impeccably. I thought at the time the form was up to a bit of question because Ashdale Bob departed so early, and maybe it is a little bit, but Blue Lord ran a solid enough race back to 2 miles the next time round when given a bit to do, and the likes of Gabinacco wouldn't be without his chance in a festival handicap, I don't believe. So I think the form of that's pretty good, and he won so impressively. Also, the way Rachel Blackmore talks about him, they talk about him as a really real machine, and you've got to take these things in note. The likes of Rachel Blackmore doesn't say this about normal horses, really. So I think Bob Ollinger at 4 to 1. I think he rates as a bit better value than Gaillard du Mesnil at 3s, personally speaking. And he's the type of horse, I'm not putting him up as my selection for the race just at this moment in time, but I'm certainly not ruling out, by the time it gets to the final selection video, I may well add this horse to my selections and have the 2 against the field, because I do really like him, and I do think he's got a massive chance. I don't think he'd be far off if you do back Bob Ollinger. I know that's a little bit contrary to what I've said before about him, because as I said, I've been a little bit snippy, but sometimes you've got to come full circle on these things, and I think he's got a serious chance. Then we've got my man, and if you watch the Champ.ie Road to Cheltenham Challenge between myself and Barry, I was lucky enough to put this horse up at 16 to 1. I know that's dreadful after timing if you're a first time watcher, but this horse, Bravemansgame, is a horse I'm just in love with, and it's very I suppose it's a bit different because I'm usually not so in love with, English slightly hype novice hurdlers, but I just think this horse is an absolute beast. He got turned over on his hurdling debut by Soaring Glory. Soaring Glory would have a massive chance in the Betfair Hurdle on the weekend, I believe, and potentially if he wins the Betfair Hurdle will come into the Supreme markets at each way prices. Over 2 miles, that wouldn't have seen him to best effect. Since stepping up to 2.5 miles, he won at Exeter, hands full, beating a decent enough field, and not any world beaters in there. Then went to Newbury, beat A Perfecto of Alan King's, who's not a bad horse, by 9.5 lengths. But it was last time out in the Challow Hurdle that we really saw this horse at his best. He beat Stargate by 10 lengths, the Glancing Queen back in third, and the likes of a Wild About Oscar was galloped into the ground to the extent where he made a couple of bad mistakes and had to be pulled up. Wild About Oscar has gone on to frank that form superbly. The Glancing Queen has been a little bit iffy for it. She won a bang average maiden hurdle around Bangor at 1 to 6, and then was beaten by Wild About Oscar at Exeter in that listed race last weekend. So the form is a little bit, there's good bits of it and there's a few things taken away from it. I think overall it is good form. I know I'm not Evan Williams' biggest fan, but this Stargate I think is a nice horse. He's probably not a grade 1 novice hurdler, but he may be a grade 1 horse in the future over a fence. I know point to point, the guys that are really kind of in on the Irish point of point form think that he's a really nice sort, and he did look it in his first 2 starts before getting absolutely demolished. This horse is just beautiful, Bravemansgame. He jumps super, he travels well, he travels powerfully, and he finds a fair bit off the bridle. There is this, I suppose, a little bit of a worry that Paul Nicholls' record with novice hurdlers at the festival hasn't been brilliant over the last couple of years. I do understand that, but Can you please tell me the last time he had a horse as good as Bravemansgame as a novice hurdler going into one of these races? It's a long time since he's had one, so I think you can throw that sort of stat in the bin. Also, then people are going to bandy about the shallow hurdle record. I do understand that, but the likes of Champ won the shallow hurdle, came very close in the Ballymore. Time Hill was arguably a little bit unlucky not to win the Albert Bartlett, having won it last year. And also, those horses didn't win the shallow hurdle by 10 lengths. Like, 10 lengths is a serious level of form we're talking about here for a Grade 1. And personally speaking, I think just the market's wrong, because you can get 4-1, 9-2 in a place about Bravemansgame. And I think that's it's just wrong. I think if you were to take out the factors of trainers, of owners, whatever it may be, if you were to look at these three horses, I believe if you were to look at these three horses comprehensively and mark up the race, betting wise, based off just known form, Bravemansgame is your favourite. I'd have him at 3-1. I'd have Bob Ollinger in there at 10-3, 7-2, and I'd have Gerhard at 9-2. The thing is completely the other way round, and I can't understand it. And Bravemansgame is my selection for the Ballymore. As I've said before, come the final selections, it wouldn't surprise me at all if I ended up taking both Bravemansgame and Bob Ollinger against the field, because I do think they've just got to beat Gerhard. Like, if you had 20 quid and you put a tenner on one at 4-1 and a tenner on the other at 9-2, if one of them wins, you're winning 50 quid. If the other one wins, you win 55 quid for your 20. That's not too bad in my book. And I do think one of them will turn over the favourite. I'm hoping it's Bravemansgame. He's a horse I've really, really taken to, and hopefully he can get the job done. Moving on to the Brown Advisory Novices Chase over 3 miles, formerly known as the RSA. It then had a brief 2-month stint as being the Festival Novices Chase. They finally landed on a sponsor, being the old sponsors of the Brown Advisory Plate, which used to be the handicap chase on the Thursday over 2.5. But the Brown Advisory Novices Chase sees one of the most exciting horses in training running this in Monkfish. And I've tried to get him beat a couple of times this year now by latest exhibition, and people that have watched the videos will know that. I don't think there is getting him beat. Look, we're a month out from the festival and he's currently 4-5, 5-6. I'm not going to be putting up any horse at odds on a month out from the festival. I know those prices are non-runner, no bet, but still, I'm not sure. I think with Monkfish in a 3-mile Grade 1 novices chase, it would surprise me if you couldn't get 4-5 on the day. If you were really, really keen to back it, I do think you might even get even money. Some firm, a Paddy Power hour sort of deal, where they try to take something on. So I wouldn't be putting him up. That being said, he is the most likely winner in this race. He's been absolutely electric in his 3 starts over fences. He won the Bartlett last year. His last 2 wins, the Neville Hotels at Christmas and the Flogas at the Dublin Racing Festival, were inch perfect. He jumps like a buck. He travels well. And unless something wrong happens, and obviously in a 3-mile novice chase, something can happen. He could fall. Something could happen. He could be brought down. But you're playing on those sort of things, and if he does get round, you'd likely think he is going to be the winner of this race. Back in September time, I put up latest exhibition for the race. I was really keen on him at the start of the season. At 16-1, I put him up at. Look, I don't know what the plan is with latest exhibition. I know Paul Nolan's humming and hawing. I understand where they're coming from. You've a horse that's plain and simply is a Grade 1 horse. There's no getting away from that, and that's Paul Nolan bias aside, because I am quite bent up on these Paul Nolan horses, but that's without that bias even coming into play. He is a Grade 1 horse, and yet he's only won 1 race over fences this year, and that's a beginner's, and he's been second in a Grade 2 and second in 2 Grade 1 since. Well clear of the field in those 2 Grade 1s as well. He likes a bit of better ground. I still would like to see them run him in the Brown Advisory here. I was about to say the RSA. I just think this is the race that is made for him. I think he needs 3 miles on slightly better ground. I still think you have to slightly adapt the adage of you can't be afraid of one horse. What happens if Monkfish does what Chacun Poursuis did last year and he stands on the stone the day of the race, or maybe he falls at the first, something a catastrophic mistake happens out of nowhere and you're sitting in the box at home waiting for Fairy House. I just don't see the merit in that. That also, The race at Ferryhouse, I don't think 2.5 miles would really see this horse the best effect. I think he is an out-and-out 3-miler. As a Grade 1 horse. He's not going to run in the National Hunt Chase. If he does run at Cheltenham, it will be in this race. But he does have it to find. But at 16-1, that's not a bad each-way price at all. He isn't 16-1. If he runs in the race, he'll probably be, I don't know, is he going to be 6-1 second favourite? I'd almost make him a bet at 6-1 each way, as I've done so the last couple of times. But that being said, I think Monkfish does have his measure. It's 3-0 in terms of their matchups so far, and it looks more than likely going to 4-0. I'm not spoofing anyone there, but I'm going to let that bet settle, and hopefully he runs, and hopefully gives us a decent run for our money. A couple more in there that just need mentioning, just at each way prices. If you're not up, if you don't want to be backing odds-on horses in any race, and you want an each-way angle into the race, I don't think you'd be too far wrong looking at a clad rear of Henry de Bromhead's. He's currently around 12-14-1. Only 2 runs over fences, but has far surpassed his hurdle form. Now, he didn't run that many times over hurdles, that being said, but he's far surpassed that. He beat Schoolboy Hours in his beginner's chase at Punchestown and won a really trappy little Grade 3 novice chase at Naas last time out from the front, jumping impeccably, beat Ascari at 10 and Pencil Full of Lead. I think that form's got a fair bit of substance, actually, and I think he's got a nice horse, race in him, potentially a Grade 1 win in him somewhere down the line. Henry de Bromhead doesn't particularly like the National Hunt Chase, and as a result he's been scratched from that race, so he's only going to run in this race if he does run at Cheltenham. I think the plan is that he will go over and run, and I think he's got every chance of running a respectable race and hopefully hit the frame. 2 English horses that can't just go by without mentioning them: the Big Breakaway and Next Destination. I've been a bit snippy about the Big Breakaway this year. I've tried to take him on, and I've successfully done so a couple of times. That being said, I thought he ran a cracker in the Cordo Star Novices Chase, considering the amount of mistakes he's made. I don't think you'll see the best of him until another year or two, because I think he's just too raw and too green, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if he ran a decent race, especially if the Tizard horses finally, turn the corner like they seemingly are at the moment. If they got to Cheltenham and they were in really good nick, we've seen in years gone by the Tizard team suddenly banging in winners left, right and centre when they're in good form. So if they were in good form, he might run a respectable race into a place. Next Destination, a horse I used to like for Willie Mullins. He's 2 from 2 over fences for Paul Nicholls, 2 graded races at that. But that being said, the bare form of those races leaves a fair bit to be desired and would need to improve a hell of a lot to go and collect or even kind of run into the places, I believe, in this race. I think it is quite strong. Moving on to the Champion Chase over 2 miles, and this is one that probably won't take too much previewing, because Chacun Pour Soi is one of the better 2-milers we've seen in recent years, I believe, and I'm just really, really hopeful that we finally get to see this horse produce the goods at Cheltenham. He's obviously been a fragile horse in years gone by. It took Willie Mullins almost 3 years to get this horse onto the track. He then went and won a beginner's chase at Naas the week before Cheltenham in 2019. If he was a bit more straight, I'm sure he would have run in the Arkle and probably won the Arkle that year. But he only ran a week before Cheltenham on Leinster National Day. He won a beginners by 30. He then went to Punchestown and beat Defi de Soy and Duke de Geneva, who both won the the Marsh and the Arkle respectively, in the Grade 1 Racing Post Novices Chase there. He was 1 from 2 last year, but that win was beating Min, and he blew up behind that Plutar at Christmas. That wasn't his running. And this year he's 3 from 3. He wasn't particularly overly enamouring down in Cork. He did the job nicely enough, but again, it looked like he needed the run, and his 2 performances at Leopardstown have been different gear completely. I don't see how logically you could be taking him on, other than the fact that just he's a short price and you're taking him on from just wanting to oppose a short price stay, like just for the sake of things. That being said, a little bit like Monkfish, not a horse I'm going to be selecting right now for the race. So it's actually a race that I'm not going to be putting up a selection in at this current point in time. I'd be waiting just to the day and backing him on the day. I will back him on the day, almost no matter the price. I just want him to win. Willie Mullins has had some rotten luck in years gone by with these Champion Chase horses. Min ran into Altior, Duvan's obviously had his issues, and Chacun Pour Soi, You know, he stood on a stone the day of the race last year. Like, how cruel a way to miss a race. He didn't even do anything wrong to himself. It just, you feel there should be vengeance in there somewhere, and hopefully that vengeance will come about this year and Ante-Post can get the job done. Looking through the rest of the runners, Altior's in there at second fav at 8-1. I see some people a bit snippy about his price at 8-1. I wouldn't make him any bigger a price. He is a two-time champion chase winner. That being said, I'm not going to back him at 8-1. Just because I've never really particularly liked the horse, even when he was in his heyday. I know people, you know, are saying, oh, wouldn't it be great if he rolled back the years? To be honest, I could give or take it. He's not been a horse. I don't know whether it's been because I've tried to take him on with the likes of Min, or maybe because people always tell me that he'd have devoured Duvan if they met and stuff like that, and I disagree. But he's a great horse, Altior. Obviously not ideal prep this year, being beaten by Nube Negra. Kempton hasn't gotten that prep run in. You would have liked to have seen him go to Newbury and win, and then at least you can say that the engine is still somewhat intact. You have to wonder whether the sun is beginning to set on Altior's career. He's obviously becoming harder and harder to train, and I'm not sure the speed is quite there as it used to. That being said, I don't know. I think the way he is, he's always going to be a shorter price because people love Altior, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if he ends up going off 4 to 5 to 1 on the day, just from people piling in almost out of sentiment alone. The rest of the runners in that, Politolog, probably a rock solid each way bet in at 9-1. He is what he is, a bit of a point and shoot merchant. Runs to form an awful lot of the time. I thought in the Clarence House he ran to form, just was beaten by a better horse on heavy ground. If horses underperform, he'll be picking up pieces. If horses run to form, the likes of Ante-Post, he'll get beaten. But I can't see him out of the frame, personally speaking. He's one of the more reliable horses in this. Nube Negra's in there. I couldn't have Nube Negra in a fit in this race, I must confess. He's been to Cheltenham 3 times, I believe, and hasn't won. He's ran a solid twice. He was second to Apple Shakir as a juvenile and was third in the Fred Winter. Before finishing 8th, I think it was, in the Greatwood Hurdle. He just looks a bit of a flat track horse in my eyes. I think the likes of a Kempton is always going to suit him a bit better. I'd quite like to see this horse run at Aintree. That being said, I don't think they don't have a massive grade 1-2 mile race, so he'd have to run in the Melling if he was to run at Aintree. But those sort of tracks I think would see him to best effect. I think he's a speedy enough horse, Spanish bred, if memory serves me correctly there. He's a nice horse. He did it well against Altior. It was a decent time and all, but I'd be hard-pressed to think that wasn't a little bit of a flash in the pan based off his overall form. Even look back at his novice form from last year, getting beaten by Esprit de Large and Rouge Vif. It's not up to winning a champion chase, and I'd be very surprised if he could go and do so. First Flow is in there as well, who comes off the back and winning the Clarence House remarkably impressively, and he's been a remarkable horse this year. He just keeps winning races. I remember backing him at Wetherby over Christmas to win the Castleford Chase. He fell in that day. David Bass gave him a super ride. He needs heavy ground, though. I know some people are saying, oh, well, he's grand on soft ground. To win a champion chase, it will need to be bottomless, and I'm not sure it's going to be. And if it's not bottomless, he won't win. He might run well for a considerable length of time. He is the type of horse. He knows where the winning post is, obviously. He's been a very progressive horse, but that Clarence House race, I don't know, it just all seemed a little bit of a flash in the pan in my eyes, and I'd almost want to see it being backed up before believing it was to be completely true. Bar Politolog, I don't know what to make of the rest of them waiting patiently. Isn't it really a 2-miler? It's now come to show Defi de Soy obviously isn't himself, and I think the form of the race is up to a bit of interpretation, other than maybe Politolog. It was a good performance, no getting away from that, but he does need heavy ground. One that I do give a solid each way play to is Put the Kettle On for Henry de Bromhead. She's in here around 14-1. I believe she'll run in this rather than the Mare's Chase. I think she's obviously a very admirable horse. She's 3 from 3 over course and distance, including winning last year's Arkle, and unlike some of these, is guaranteed to love the track, which is a major plus in her plus in her cap, or feather in her cap, I suppose. I think she's the type of horse that wouldn't beat Ante-Post if Shakan was to run to his level best, but may well be filling out the frame. So no official selection in the champion chase, but if you were to pin me down, I'd say the first three will be Ante-Post, Politolog, and Put the Kettle On, just with where I stand at the race at the moment. I really hope Ante-Post does the business. Moving on to the cross-country chase, not a race that particularly does it for me, but there's a few reliable and very popular old stagers in this, over 3 miles 6 on the Banks course. Starting off with your favourite, Easy's Land, who won the race last year so impressively for David Cotan and Jonathan Plouganou in JP McManus's Silks. I'm not sure what to make of Easy's Land. He's 7-4 for this race. I'd be of the impression it's perhaps a little bit skimpy. The reason being, he went into the race last year in stellar form. He won at Cheltenham in December time. He was then bought by JP. I think they really fancied him going into the race to beat Tiger Roll, especially on the ground, and he went and did so. I think heavy ground is very helpful for this horse. It's probably not quite as imperative as it is for the likes of a First Flow, but I think heavy ground will see him to best effect. On better ground, I wouldn't be so sure about this horse personally. I think he does need it very deep. 7-4, as I say, I just think it's a little bit skimpy. He's ran once this year and was beaten into 4th. Now, I know you can make excuses for that race. It was on good ground back in November. He was carrying a ton of weight. I do get that. It's now off levels, and he's obviously well in with an awful lot of those other horses that ran in that race as a result. But it's not screaming value for me. I don't think the prep has been quite as good as it had been last year, and I'm willing to take him on as a result. Tiger Roll in there at 6 or 7 to 1. I love Tiger Roll. Obviously a 2-time Grand National winner, 4-time Festival winner. I think I've backed him for the cross country the last 3 years, and he won twice and came second last year. I just don't see it this year, and I know that sounds, I suppose, a little bit negative, with one of the festival greats, one of the household names of horse racing. I just don't see it. I really don't. It wouldn't surprise me at all if this horse pulled up, halfway. I don't want it to happen. I'd love him to run a huge race. I'd love to be proven wrong. But that November run was very disconcerting, where he was pulled up before halfway by Robbie Power. I'm just not sure whether the engine's there anymore. If it is, Gordon Elliott is some master of a trainer. If he gets this horse back to run well in this or run well in a national, God, he's an absolutely superb trainer. Because I don't know with Tiger Roll, I don't know whether they'd even chance him with a change of headgear, perhaps, just to maybe rejuvenate him. I'm sure they've been taking him away for days hunting and stuff like that to try and sweeten him up. I'm sure they're doing everything in their possibility to make it happen again, but I'm not so sure personally. And if it is soft ground, I just can't see him. I can't see him winning. I know that's sad to say. Is he the type of horse to have a sentimental bet on? Maybe a couple of quid each way or something, but it wouldn't really be for me. I'd be quite willing to take him on. Potter's Corner's next in the market. He seems to be an absolute wise guy's horse for this race and has been all year, and I don't know whether I'm missing it with Potter's Corner. He's never been a horse that's quite done it for me, personally. I know he's won the Midlands National, he's won the Welsh National, he's a very good horse at that. And he ran quite well when third in the cross-country race in November. He was shouldering a fair bit of weight. He ran well. He jumped well as well for his first start over these fences. And it's always good and always a positive in comparison to what I'm going to say in a couple of minutes' time to have a race at Cheltenham over these fences under the belt. I don't know. I just don't see it with the horse. As I say, maybe it's just one of these things that I just haven't quite taken to the horse. If I'm being brutally honest, I know this is going to sound absolutely stupid, but I think some people almost think he's a better horse after he's won the virtual Grand National last year. I think people have that in their mind almost, that he's won the Grand National, and it was a simulated race. We don't have a clue how he'd run in the National. He will run in the National this year. Is this a prep for this, or are they going to be fully tuned up for this? I know Christian Williams is a very much a target trainer. I don't know whether he will have the 2 targets, or whether this will be kind of a nice spin round before a proper tilt at the National. I'm not so sure. Maybe he holds each way claims. I'm probably undervaluing him as a horse, to be honest, but he wouldn't be for me at 7-1. I'd want to see a bit more juice in the price than that. There's a couple of French horses in there that I'm going to discuss. First of all, though, looking at Some Neck, who's probably one of the chief protagonists from Ireland, which isn't a great sign. He's 25-1. I think he's got it to find. He's a likeable horse. He may run well, but I think he's got it to find. I think Shady Operator won't run at Cheltenham, personally speaking. Enda Bulger was a bit iffy when he was interviewed after the PP Hogan last week. Very coy about where the plans for this horse would be, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if he was to just go back to Punchestown and maybe run into Latouche at the end of the season. The 2 French horses that I was actually coming down on, and I was very betwixt and between the 2 of them, are Ejas and Unicatat. One trained by Macaire, one trained by David Cotin as well, and I've sided with Ejas, who is a stablemate of Easy's Land, trained by David Cotin. He's a horse I've spent the last couple of hours, I've spent the last couple of days looking through all this horse's runs over in France on the At the Races website. And he's a super jumper of a fence, I must say. He won the Grand Prix de Pau over 3 mile 2 on heavy ground, which would ease my stamina fears. He hasn't been over 3 mile 6 before, and Unicatat has, which I suppose is something to bear in mind. You know, he isn't officially sure to stay, but the way he stayed 3-2 on heavy ground would indicate he should be getting home. As I say, he's a lovely jumper of a fence. He hasn't obviously run over the banks at Cheltenham, and he hasn't run over the banks at Pau as well. That Grand Prix de Pau is a mix and match of very different things, but like there's no drop banks or anything. There's an awful lot of kind of hedge fences and a couple of drops here and there. It does take a fair bit of jumping. That being said, there's no getting away from that, and there's barrels and all that sort of stuff. So I thought it was a really likeable performance. He's put in a few nice enough runs over hurdles as well to keep him sweet, and it just wouldn't surprise me. He's ran 5 times this year. He's won 3 and come second twice. He's only 7 years old, and it just wouldn't surprise me if David Cotin has a more, a horse maybe in just slightly better form. The prep has been a little bit better than it has been for Easy's Land, and you're getting 10-1 about Ejas, which I quite like. Another thing that's really swayed me in favour of him is that David Cotin has given him a speculative entry for the Grand National, which is kind of a boost in morale in terms of that they obviously like the horse quite a lot. Jason Kiley, who's done a few things for the Champ.ie in years gone by, who's in one of our WhatsApps as a result. He was on Nick Luck's podcast the other day, and he was on Luck on Sunday last Sunday as well, and he all but confirmed that Ejas will be coming over to run in the race. So as much as 10-1 you are getting non-runner no bet, I do think he is going to run in the race, and I think he's got a rock solid each way chance. I wouldn't put you off Unicatat though. He is one that's really interesting me, and one that I may look to play in with Ejas on the day. He's currently 14-1 non-runner no bet. That mightn't be the worst price either. Finally, the last race on the day, and I know I have been rambling for 37 minutes at the moment. I know plenty of people, though, have said that they've enjoyed the longer videos, so I'm going to keep with them for these Cheltenham previews as much as I can to give you as much in-depth analysis of these races as I can possibly give. Do bear in mind as well that I do try to record all of these videos in one take, so by the end of videos, the voice may be going quite a lot, but I do try to get them off in one take. I'm no good at editing. I'm no good at fancy graphics or anything like that. It's fairly what you see, what you get. Me talking to you guys in conversational form. Moving on to the last one, though, of the day, the Champion Bumper. A real head scratcher of a race. The favourite are currently best priced at 13-8 is Kill Crush for Willie Mullins. Depending on the amateur jockey situation, Patrick Mullins would ride him if he's cleared to ride him. Other than that, I assume it would end up being Paul Townend on him if they can't sort that out. One thing that do bear in mind, because I've done it myself in episodes gone by, but this horse is pronounced Kill Crush, not Kill Cruish. or Kilcruit, like some people have said, like myself in times gone by, it is pronounced Kilcrut. He won at the Dublin Racing Festival in extremely facile manner, beating Let's Be Clear About It, What Do You Want, and Chemical Energy and Ramillies, a really strong bumper at the time it looked at, and he put them to bed in ungodly fashion, I must say. I thought it was a super performance. He won on the bridle. Patrick Mullins didn't move a muscle. Before that, he won on the bridle at Navan in a decent enough bumper that's worked out okay. Ballycairn was back in third for Gordon Elliott, who's won since over Christmas at Leopardstown, so the form of that doesn't look too bad either. That being said, you're just not sure with that Leopardstown form whether it's just quite as good as it is. I know some people have tried to damage it with the sectional timings and the way that the race perhaps fell apart. That being said, it was a super performance. I think the main rationale for me taking him on is probably the price. 6 to 4, 13 to 8. I know people are on at fancy prices. If you are on at fancy prices, I think well done to you. Absolutely superb bet. If you do have him at anything double figures, I know some people do. But at 13 to 8, I can't recommend it as value. Appreciate it was in the similar vein last year. When he went into the bumper at 6 to 4, I personally didn't see him getting beat. I'd backed him at 16 to 1 last year. I was really hoping he wouldn't be beat, and he was. He was turned over, which was an awful shame. And I just don't think anything's a cert in the bumper, really, and especially when you've got as good a horse as the second favourite in this. And I have just come down on the side of the second favourite, Sir Gerhard, in this at 3 to 1. I just think he's been the nominated horse for the Gordon Elliott stable almost all the way through the year. And he's been favourite for the race all until Kilcrut's performance at the Dublin Racing Festival. He missed the Dublin Racing Festival based off an infection in his foot, which made him miss around a week's worth of training, which is obviously a negative. And I would be advising probably to take the 3 to 1 non-runner no bet as a result, just in case. I know an awful lot of firms are non-runner no bet, so maybe that's just an obvious thing to say at the moment. But I think it's probably worthy with this horse. I'm just not sure, just in case you get a situation where they say, well, he hasn't quite recovered from it and he won't go to Cheltenham. I think he will, though, as long as he's fitting well. This has been the plan all year. He's ran twice in bumpers this year. He won a Down Royal bumper that's actually worked out quite well. The second, fourth and fifth have all won races since, and the second, third and fifth have all won races since, and the fourth horse hasn't run since, so you're not sure about the form of that, but that was pretty impressive. And then he won at Navan in a listed race, beating Let's Be Clear About It by 4.5 lengths. Now I know on collateral form he therefore does have it a bit to prove with the favourite Kilcrut based off a line on Let's Be Clear About It, but they were two very differently run races, and I think Sir Gerhard's performance can be upgraded a bit from a base point of that. I think 3 to 1's a little bit better value than Kilcrut at 6 to 4, and that's the way I'm going into the race. There are a couple of each way alternatives. If you're not fancying the two at the top of the market, I think it probably is between the two personally. It's a real shame not to see Eileen Dover in this race. It looks like she won't run for Pam Sly. I think she'd have a cracking chance actually in this at an each way price. She absolutely dispensed of Grangy at Market Raisin, who went on to win the Grade 2 Mares Bumper at the Dublin Racing Festival. Grangy will be running in this race for the Syndicates team, led by Jack Cantillon. I know one of my friends, Tom Nolan, his brother Connor, has a share in it, so that's a plug for you lads who've been on to me an awful lot about this Grangy. She has an each way chance, but on the bare form of things, she probably does have it to prove at 25 to 1. Other than that, you've got Three Stripe Life in there at 16 to 1, would have a bit of a chance from an each way perspective. He won very impressively at Navan, and also Gordon Elliott has hollow games for the Morans. Wouldn't surprise me at all if this horse was to run, because I know the Morans want festival runners, but I think he'll be better in a couple of years' time when he sees a hurdle or potentially a fence. He looks a well-built horse, maybe lacking a bit of tactical speed for a champion bumper. Anyway, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. That's that, I suppose. It has been a long slog. Sir Gerhard for the bumper, the last selection in there. I hope you guys did enjoy it. If you did, please do give it a like and subscribe to the channel down below if you want to be informed about any more of these previews going forward. Of course, go and look out all of those things I said at the start of the video, whether it's myself and Josh's channel, whether it's the preview nights are on, or Kieran's video. I'd really appreciate it if you could share the love and look out for those things as well. I know I'm not doing a preview video for the weekend's racing, even though it is actually very good weekend racing at Ascot and Haydock. So do go and follow me over on Twitter if you haven't already, because my selections for the weekend will be on Twitter. So just to let you know, if you do want a few selections for the weekend, do go and follow me over there. The link to my Twitter will be in the description down below. As I said, hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully between now and the day 3 preview we can all land a couple of winners and boost the pot going into Cheltenham. And obviously let me know your thoughts on day 2 down below for the big races. The big burn up in the Ballymore. Can Shakan do it in the Championship? And is Kilcrut as good as Leopardstown perhaps told us? I want to know your opinions down below. Until the day 3 preview, which will hopefully be early next week. Hope you stay safe, stay well, land a couple of winners, as I said, and I'll see you guys then. Cheers.